it doesn't mean you have to be negative and get onto them, but you can be positive, encouraging and enthusiastic about their development. So if things aren't going quite right, it's how you deliver those messages. And I think if they see that you're enthusiastic about their development, it's going to create the right environment. Hello and welcome to Coaching Cards. My name's Si Houston. I'm joined by Mark Kearney and Vicky Fisher, and we're going to chat about creating a thriving learning environment. So I'll start with the first cards. First question, what does a thriving learning environment mean to you, and why is it important to create one? Mark.
Very, very important topic. A key element for all the ages for me is a playful element. So it's sort of people feel relaxed and get some fun from it, and it's not overly serious. Even at the top level, even with adults, we should all still like to have some sort of play, and that might sort of transform itself at the top into competition individually with younger ones or a team aspect.
Love that. I think, yeah, like following on a thriving learning environment, like somewhere where everyone wants to be, like players and coaches. Like, you know, when you walk into a session, you feel a buzz. You know, there's smiles, there's laughter, there's talking and communication, like people helping each other, people supporting each other. If
players want to be there, if they want to come back for the next session, I think you're doing your job as a coach. The other thing as well is empowering individuals, empowering your players. So do they know why they're doing what you're asking them to do? I think if they know why, they're empowered to go and have a go and kind of play without fear.
To help any new coaches, how do you create a thriving learning environment?
There's a huge piece around knowing the players in front of you, like why are they there, what motivates them, what are their interests, what do they enjoy. The more we can know about our players, the more that we can tailor the environment and the sessions to suit their needs and their motivations.
I'd sum that up as connection. So a little phrase I use is connection over correction. So a thriving learning environment, if I'm advising new coaches, first thing I'm starting with is connection, knowing your players like you said. But there's no race to that, there's no shortcut to it, so it can't be achieved in one session. You've got to recognise that one session or your first few as small jigsaw pieces to a larger jigsaw. And then the second part would be just create practices that will get your topic, your objectives out, and create an environment where, like I say, they're not scared to try something out.
You know, there is going to be mistakes, there is going to be opportunities for the players to learn, but also they're going to do some things right. Make sure that you catch them doing it right and catch the intent. Are they trying something and it doesn't quite work, but they get a little pat on the back for attempting it, because that's a crucial element of that safe environment that thrives, because they go, I can have another go at it.
People often think about success as winning the games or the 3 points. Actually, no, in this session, if I see you do this is success. So it gives people something to strive for, something to achieve. It gives us as coaches things to be noticing and observing. And then that, like I say, it makes people feel good. So what should coaches look out for to judge if their environment is right for their players?
I think that word safety comes out, and the first thing you think of is it physically safe? Is it inclusive for the players? And then the next thing that we mean by safety is the psychological safety. So are players able to perform something without fear of getting it wrong? So I think, what does it look like if you're stepping into a session which is looks like a thriving learning environment? You're going to want to see creativity. Are players trying things that they've never done before? Are coaches catching them doing it right? Or encouraging the positive intent rather than just the execution of whether it was actually performed well or not?
The coach has got a piece to be a bit of an obsessive observer to see and get a sense and feel of it. So is there energy in there? And just sort of the players, you can see a response from them, smiley faces, just sort of fully on it, balls back in, and they're just, yeah. And the old favourite one at the end, the kids go, have we finished already? Is that it?
I think there's a piece as well around how quick are the players to come back each week to the session. Like, you know when you see players like racing onto the pitch, ready to play. So that's a measure, isn't it, that they want to be there think there's a piece as well around how often do we ask the players for their thoughts and feedback on sessions. You know, it's their game. Like, our job's to help them, you know, play the game, but how often do we ask them actually what they're enjoying, what sessions they enjoy, you know, what actually we might look to change or do differently to make sure it's that safe space, it's that place they want to be, the place they want to keep coming back to.
I think you've got to have that humility as a coach to know that it's not about you as a coach, it's not about us when we're delivering. Having the curiosity to open it out to your players and be able to take that feedback. What does a thriving learning environment look like on a training and a match day?
From a talent perspective, and I think the context is important, there's probably a little edge to the match day compared to the practicing, and that's not only brought by the coach, but it's also the players recognise that, because it's against opposition, and there's a winning or losing. There is a score, and then if you complement that with all the different individual maybe tasks within it and sort of team and unit tasks, you can have a holistic winning element to it.
I think in the grassroots space, there's, again, probably a couple of things. One, around that definition of success. So success might be, if we practice something in training, do we see it happen in the match? You know, so that learning piece and that safety to actually, I've practiced at a training, I'm going to go and have a go at, you know, in the match situation. But I also think there's a wider piece about our game being inclusive and making sure that the match day is a place where everybody gets the opportunity to play. So actually, if players are committed to coming to training, you know, wherever they are on their own learning journey, they should get the opportunity to be on that pitch on a weekend and play minutes. And as coaches, our responsibility is to make sure that those players get those opportunities during the season.
I think it's a great point. It comes down to, between training and match day, they're obviously fundamentally quite different things, but the alignment and the consistency between the two is crucial. So while training might traditionally be more around getting loads of touches on the ball and having fun, and match day could be perceived as you know, a bit more intense and maybe about the winning. Well, how can you take the best parts of both and feed them in? So you get this consistency across your week, if you like, that mini block of work. So what I'm getting at there is, how can match days be fun and have the same alignment of messages like you touched on? And how can training have that element of competition as well? Yeah. And that, rather than switching on and off as we get to training and match day, that they will feel different naturally, but how much can we align them? And then the themes throughout the week, you're obviously going to want to see them on match day.
Do you have any insight to help coaches provide sessions that are enjoyable but also develop the players?
I think our sessions, our sessions have to look and feel like the game. So, you know, when I'm working with coaches, we talk all the time about having sessions that involve scoring and stopping goals, because that's what the game involves. Yeah. And when we ask our players what they love about football, it's often scoring a goal, setting up a teammate, or like stopping the opposition scoring a goal. So for me, like, some of those top tips are around make our sessions look and feel like the game, and that doesn't need to be really, really complicated. Yeah. And also, like I say, get the players involved with how they want the sessions to look and feel. You know, what a tool for coaches, you know, to use them and get their ideas.
The sessions have got to look like the game. That's why players are there fundamentally, because they fell in love with the game. And you can talk about the kind of practice spectrum from realism and repetition, but how do you get both? So how does it look like the game, and what conditions can you place on it? How do you set your practice up so it does look like the game, but you're manipulating the repetition and you're getting that repetition as high as possible? So players get the chance to practice what they're going to be doing on a match day. It shouldn't feel too different, and players will keep coming back if they're scoring goals, if they're stopping goals, if they're creating goals, if goalkeepers are saving shots. Fundamentally, it's got to match up.
Can they see where it's going to fit in the game and where it might enhance their performance? Or if we've got the environment right, they feel as though they can explore and experiment with it and bring their own uniqueness to it? And piggybacking on getting to know your players is, what are their motivation, why are they there? You know, if they like stopping goals, give them loads of opportunity. If they like creating or scoring them, you've got a plan for that. You can't just be random with your teams.
How do you recognise and manage individual differences within a group?
Yeah, it's knowing your players. Knowing your players is one thing, but planning for how you're going to put players in different scenarios during that training session. So player A up against player B, is that the most suitable for them? If you're putting them in different positions within a small-sided game, what are the matchups going to look like? Because before you know it, player A might not have had any touches, so you need to be aware of knowing the players. So what if player A needs stretching, they're getting it straight away, he or she is absolutely flying, and I haven't planned to progress this session on. But what if player B is struggling, and that can sometimes be planned for? How do you scale it up, scale it down away from your kind of rigid session plan?
And being brave with that to not be wed to your plan.
Yeah.
I think a good thinking tool that we recommend is the four corner model. So have a look at, it's something to go and profile your players on a little bit, and moving away from the football, the actual technical, tactical, is that social corner. Do they understand? Is there a decent group dynamics? Do they understand the boundaries? Do they feel free within it? And then the sort of safety, learning, respect as boundaries, and then as a coach, recognising opportunities to reinforce that. I
just think sometimes as coaches we have a responsibility to make sure we know about our players. Do we know, their playing age against their physical age? How long have they actually been playing football? How many coaching sessions have they had? So we can look at this group of players in front of us, but they're all so different. They've all had a different journey, and it can be really easy to forget that sometimes. But yeah, we've almost got to pause first and recognise. And
being okay with that as well. So sometimes you need to get in and drive it, and sometimes you've got to have the ability to step out and observe. The final bits of that process, because we've spoken about planning, we've spoken about actually what it looks like when you deliver it, but the review process is so important as well. This person, they need stretching for next time, and just writing yourself those notes that you might forget or you need to just put into place for next time. How important is it to give players a voice and choice?
The value that will come from engaging in strategies and engaging in our thinking when we're planning of how we're going to engage players in solving problems within the game. So the actual empowerment of players is crucial.
But ultimately, once the whistle blows and the match starts, we're not on the pitch.
Absolutely right.
It's the players, it's their game, and they're the ones that are making every decision in every moment. So if we don't give them a voice and empower them within our sessions, how can we expect them to do that, within the game? So, and I think that can start with, really small stuff, who chooses the captain of the team? Is it us as coaches, or are the players given a voice in that? Within training sessions, how often are players allowed to make their own decisions within sessions? I just think, again, we have to remember, why are we here, who are we trying to help, and what's the end goal?
Sometimes you're only a small part of a player's journey, because they'll have a number of different coaches throughout their journey. So checking understanding is really important, because how do you know what they know unless you do give them a voice and choice? Sometimes if the intent's there but the execution isn't, then it's not a great indicator of, do they know if they're doing the right thing, or what are they trying to do? So asking them, giving them the voice and the choice is fundamental. The other part to that is almost setting an objective. The objective is, when we win the ball, we want to attack their goal as quickly as possible. That's the objective. How they get there, how they solve that problem, can be handed over to them. Again, you're checking what they know, and you're empowering them to get involved and think a bit critically. Like you say, when they step over the line, it is over to them.
We need to understand that we're significant others within this process. So we're not redundant. Them asking the best questions or good questions, and then if some of them come up with good answers, we were going to probably tell them that anyway.
Yeah.
But then we can confirm great answer, and then let them go and have a go at it. So you're continually trying to raise the challenge point. If you change your lenses a little bit and explore and experiment as a coach, you'll definitely get somewhere.
The other part to that, and in terms of voice and choice, is what they want feedback on. So off-field coaching is becoming a lot more prevalent now. We're recognising the importance of what we can do in terms of feedback, post-game, post-session, whether that's with video or whether it's just a verbal communication. And again, checking their understanding there, letting them lead the feedback at times in the right moments can be really, really important.
How do you ensure that the environment you create caters for the needs and the wants of your players?
We say it all the time, it's got to be player centred. At whatever age and whatever level, it's no different really to working with adults or young people.
Exactly, putting a player at the centre of their development is massive. So what do they want to become better at? Where do they see themselves playing? And if they're striving to be forwards at younger age groups, then that's great, and we need to know why and what that skill, what they feel they're good at and what they feel they want to get better at. It also allows you to set those individual development plans, if you like, and they're almost agreements or conversations between coaches, players, parents at times to have that alignment and the consistent messaging, and they can show you the how they want to be coached and what they want to be coached on as much as anyone, and it can be so valuable.
Obviously the question was around wants and needs as well, so from a talent point of view, even the grassroots, so your sort of foundation phase, there's a need for them to be able to explore and experiment, so they can, from a physical need, they can wire the system. Mm-hmm. So they need lots of touches, they need lots of goes at stuff, maybe the small-sided stuff. And then as we progress into the YDP, these are just little areas just to consider is sort of the cognitive and physical change of puberty. So the physics, so you generally under 13s, 14s, you get a little enlarged in terms, and then the sort of impact on all the other four corners. They're interdependent, so they're always in play, all four corners. And then adults, like you say, they've got a different outlook, because they've already been filled up with stuff, so they'll already have lots of football library stuff. So it's understanding some of them needs, but then the crucial element is honing in on the individual.
Can the coach's behaviour affect the environment that they create?
I would say absolutely yes. Coaches can impress onto players in terms of their behaviours and their tone at times, the way their coaching messages. If you're positive and enthusiastic as a coach, that's a good place to start. And what I mean by that is genuine praise, genuine positivity. Yeah. So what you get sometimes if you say great pass, great tackle, great goal with absolutely everything, it can start to wear off, and you've got to be authentic and honest with that positivity and enthusiasm, because that will rub off onto your players. They will start then doing your work for you and praising other players and saying well done when it is the right thing. And then on the flip side of that, if players are seen to be making mistakes or choosing the wrong decision, it doesn't mean you have to be negative and get onto them, but you can be positive, encouraging and enthusiastic about their development. So if things aren't going quite right, it's how you deliver those messages. And I think if they see that you're enthusiastic about their development, it's going to create the right environment.
If I can hone in on a key element of learning as mistakes, and then trying to understand the player's relationship with mistakes, and then your own. So does it, as a coach, that self-reflection piece, does it lead to frustration? Trying to harness that mistakes are okay, and it's part of learning, but then the coach's behaviours and what they say have to match that.
It's when you correct it as well. So if you're straight in correcting it, you're removing that element of them problem solving for themselves. They're getting that instant feedback. Yeah. They might already know, and if they don't, you've got to give them the opportunity to have a little think and have another go. You have to go and advise and give them a helping hand when they need it, but it doesn't always have to be instantaneous.
A lot of my coaching works in the female game. I can guarantee that 90% of the time, the girls know if they've made a mistake, and they absolutely do not want to be reminded of it. Yeah. In that moment, like I say, they need to get over that mistake, and actually our role might be to help them recognise why it went wrong or what they might do different next time. But the mistake doesn't need highlighting. Because like I say, they already feel rubbish enough about that. If we speak about being, really positive and enthusiastic on the sideline, if you flip that over and you're on the sideline, using bad language or, with rubbish body language, then the players feed off of that, and will do the same on the pitch. If they make a mistake, they'll cross their arms, or they won't recover, or they won't respond. And I think there's a wider piece as well around like how our behaviours in training link to match days. So the environment that we create, if we say that we're an environment where everybody plays, but then we leave the same people out every week, like our actions don't align. But it becomes, you know, it's that performance over result. It's that taking players on a journey. So I think we've got to be so mindful of it's not just the in the moment, you know, being positive and enthusiastic. It's the longer term. Actually, what are our actions week in and week out? Are we consistent?
How do coaches build an environment of trust and respect?
This piece really shines a light. If we look at the four corner on that social corner, and I think the coach will get a lot of reward if he really pays attention to that aspect of it. The trust stuff is if you say something and then when you're challenged you back it up, and there's a consistency in it. If you're going to give everyone an opportunity and you know, you see mistakes as a key way of learning, but when that comes along, your behaviour suddenly changes. They'll sense it and feel it. And also there's a bit around once you've got your boundaries, is actually if a player pushes them or steps out of the boundaries, you've got to then deal with it. You can't let it go, because you've hopefully established the boundaries within the group. It can be a positive way of what have we all agreed, because if we keep the theme of including everyone, you know, as a team, how do we want to be viewed by other teams? And we'll have role models in the team, so then it's using them, and then we've got to be role models.
I also think there's a piece around availability. So as coaches, how accessible are we to our players? You know, and when I say that, how much time do we actually spend talking to them, or when do they know that they can come and talk to us or ask a question and feel safe to do so? We're so focused on what we're doing and what we're doing next and what's next that we lose that touch point with the players. So yeah, I think it's important.
I think building that trust and respect it's a mutual thing. It's a two-way process, and we talk about, you know, being a role model as a coach. Some of the best coaches we see now in the modern top of the men's game, top of the women's game, are willing to have that humility, that honesty, that vulnerability, and take accountability when things aren't going quite right. That will transfer to your players, because what you want is that back from them, is, you know, owning it, taking responsibility. Definitely. So it's a two-way street there.
Okay, next question. So what advice do you have to help coaches create a thriving learning environment when working in different areas of the game?
I think if we start by thinking about our very youngest players, so they might be playing the game for the first time, it just has to be this fun, positive experience that keeps them coming back. Probably our sessions should look at, you know, getting them moving, getting them running around, getting them used to working with other people. And probably it's really hard sometimes, but we need to remember they're not mini adults. Like they're children who are exploring, who are playing, who have such different motivations from adults.
I think as you go through the age groups, it's knowing why they're there again, because that can change, but it's layering things on top as you go through the age groups. So while at younger age groups, it's about, you know, that play phase early on, about harnessing and cultivating that love for the game. So it's layering things on top, like your tactical information and sharing the ball and the right times to, you know, to introduce that, the tactics and strategies. But certainly at a younger age group, it's as many, you know, touches as you can on the ball. But it's still capturing that love for the game as you go through the age groups. And I think that's one thing that shouldn't change, and perhaps does as we get older. Perhaps professionalism comes into it, and different physical returns as well. But one thing that probably remains constant is the love for the game. So
if you think of the PDP sort of phase within the talent space, where it becomes a job for them, they get employed at 16, still 16. But that challenge for coaches then to make sure that the player still has the energy and the passion and the enthusiasm for the game and just loving the game, but then also realising that they're a step closer to getting into the first team, so they can see the end game a little bit, and I think there's a massive support piece there, because it does become really tough for them in them early sort of scholar years.
I think sometimes as well we forget as well that as our players move up through the game, so and they might be transitioning to playing adult football, they often still do want to learn and develop, and I think sometimes we think, oh, they already know everything. So I think there's that piece around, for our adults who are playing, how do we still support them and help them and challenge them? And in our grassroots game, you know, for our adults who are playing, it needs to be a good place. It's a hobby. It should be something they love coming to do, and it's a place where they come and play away from work, and it's a stress release, and it's an opportunity to be social and perhaps play with their friends. And so that thriving environment is going to look different according to the age and stage and the environment that they're in.
Studying that level of the game, sometimes we call it the game when we're generalising, sometimes we call it their game, where we're really honing in on what it is it looks like. So if we're talking about girls under 11, for example, it's completely different to boys under 16. But if you're coaching at any level, you need to be an expert in that level. What do the games look like? What do the problems that are being posed look like? So if we take some of the principles of play, for example, the penetration and compactness, while they don't change massively, depending on different formats, they can look quite different, and the way we coach them looks different. As the number of players on the pitch look different, then how we penetrate or stay compact might change. So I think being an expert in what the game actually looks like, that's physical, technical, tactical, social, at any given level is the key.
So to wrap up this discussion, what are your quick fire top tips to help coaches create a thriving learning environment?
Players don't care what you know until they know that you care. I think that's one that gets used quite often, but I really like it. It's that human element of knowing your players, putting them at the centre and at the heart of their development, and having that humility and authenticity to gain trust and respect. And the other one is practice design. If you set your practices up right, if they look like the game, the problems that are being posed will be realistic, they'll get enough repetition, and it's up to them then to solve the problems themselves, and you're just supporting that process. So I guess those are my two top tips.
It's just sort of piggybacking on what's been a key theme is build relationships with your players. In the talent space and at grassroots, if it comes that you recognise there's something that is out of your sort of area of expertise and stuff, you try and direct them somewhere else. But and I say build relationships because they're all different, and that's a tough job, but it's have the intention to do that, and then have that enthusiasm and show that you're passionate about the game.
Following on from what you've said, Si, put on sessions that your players will love, so scoring goals, stopping goals, like making it look like their game. And we've said it so many times, be consistent. Like, be you, but be consistent, so the players know where they stand, and you can build that two-way relationship.